This is Inspiring Design, where unique innovators come together to share their knowledge, share their insight, and keep us up to date with the latest industry trends. And here's your host, Roshan Senanayake.
All right, welcome back, fellow designers and educators, and it's Roshan here, and welcome back to another episode of Inspiring Design. And I've actually got a very special guest here today. He is a 19-year-old CEO, the founder of 56 Creations, a 2017 Young Australian of the Year, the Australian Young Innovator of the Year, winner of Westpac's 20 Businesses of Tomorrow. He's been featured in so many places like 60 Minutes, Sunrise, The Today Show, National Geographic. I can keep going, and I think I'm going to take up the whole podcast recording time just to outline Taj's accomplishments. But let me welcome Taj Babari, from the CEO of 56 Creations. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me on the show.
My pleasure, mate. My pleasure. Thank you so much for giving up your time. So can you start off by just giving a little bit of a background on yourself, like where you're from and how you actually came about to found 56 Creations?
Absolutely. So 56 Creations started back in 2014, and the central goal of 56 at the time was to teach young people about tech and coding. We thought it was super important at the time. I thought it was an incredibly important skill. We had Barack Obama, the former president, talking about the importance of coding. Our former Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, spoke about the importance of coding as well. And
absolutely.
We jumped on the bandwagon and thought, all right, well, if they think it's important, then we kind of have to think it's important as well. So we went and created this do-it-yourself tablet for kids.
Yeah.
We called it the leg of the 21st century. Media loved it. We were on all national media. We sold a hell of a lot of these devices because people just wanted tech, and if they got the opportunity to actually build their own device, they thought that was amazing. And that was the start of 56 Creations. And it wasn't until a few years later where we realized that, you know what, it's not these tech skills that are important. In fact, they're quite useless in the workforce of the future. What's important are the people skills. What we need is a generation of creators, not necessarily a generation of consumers.
Yeah.
And by teaching young people about tech skills, we are creating a generation of consumers. So we started teaching entrepreneurship to young people, and I guess over the last couple of years, we've now worked with around 55,000 students from around Australia. Yeah. And the goal by next year is 100,000. So big year to come.
That's brilliant, mate. So you started that the tablet when you were 14, is that right?
Correct.
That's brilliant. How did you actually come about, coming up with that idea in the first place?
I wanted it. I was like, how cool would it be if I had an item like this?
Yeah.
And I was part of the target market at the time. The device was aimed to students aged 11 to 16 or 12 to 16, and I was 14. So I was like, I'm right in the middle of this target market. All my mates are in the target market. And everyone I spoke to was just like, yeah, I want one. We spoke to parents, and when I went to my friends' houses or whatever on weekends, I'd ask their parents, hey, would you buy one of these for your kids? And most parents said yes, because it was educational and it was obviously something the kids wanted as well.
Yeah. So you were basically designing for yourself in a way, because you were smack bang in the middle of the same target market, so you understood. Yeah, yeah. That's brilliant. And tell me a little bit about 56 Creations, your team, and what you guys have got planned for this year.
Absolutely. So this year is going to be the year of 100,000 kids. We're going to hit that number by September this year.
What are you going to do for the rest of the 4 months?
Absolutely. Well, look, we set this lofty goal of 100,000 kids by 2020, and we were like, 2020 is ages away. So we were hitting about 25,000 kids a year, then we went to 40,000, and I guess we were like, it's just, we've got ages. And it was only until the start of this year we were like, shit, we're in 2019. We're going to have to get through these numbers pretty quickly. And we've got some awesome projects coming up this year, and we're really excited to hit that number. Yeah. This year throughout, in just Australia, leaving aside our work in New Zealand and internationally, purely just Australia, 100,000 kids. So this is going to be a cool year for us. We're a team of 42 now. We're hiring one a week, so it's going to be a good year for us.
Brilliant. And so tell me a little bit about how this fits in with the 21st century skills that a lot of school listeners want to know about, and obviously how in preparing students for jobs that don't even exist. This is one of the biggest concerns that a lot of our teachers have mentioned to us, and they want to know how all these things fit together. And obviously, like you mentioned before, coding and all these entrepreneurship and innovation skills are part of that. And we're starting to see a few leaders in schools mentioning these things, and I think government's catching on now, and then the PR articles, it's actually pushing out more than it was a year ago. So what are your thoughts on that and how it all fits with the 21st century?
Certainly. Well, look, 12 months ago we commissioned and launched a research series called the Future Proofing Young People series. And as part of that, we spoke to big business, medium-sized business, small business, educators, parents, and we asked them a series of simple questions. And the biggest one was, well, what are the top 5 skills young people are going to need in that 21st century workforce of the future? Prep students of today will be graduating in 2032. That is absolutely insane. What is the future going to look like in 2032? And we asked these businesses, we spoke to thousands of businesses, and it was an external piece of research, and the top 5 skills of the workforce of the future were all people skills. Coding came in 11 and 12. Coding 11, robotics number 12.
There you go.
The top 5 were all based around communication, collaboration, creativity, intercultural understanding, being able to work with other people and having that. I think it was purely that creative skill set was fundamental, and being able to public speak was a common message that everyone gave. And we compare that to what our schooling system looks like right now. Teachers, we've got an overcrowded curriculum that doesn't allow for creativity within the classroom. And I think that's where we fit in really quite well. We're able to run these incursion after-school programs, and obviously business camp during the school holidays, to run these express workshops to get young people introduced to some of these vital skills that will take them very, very far in that workforce of the future. So it's exciting. We get to have a lot of fun with kids every year. We just finished business camp season for the summer holidays. Had thousands of students go through that program. It was great fun. So now I think I can't wait to see these kids really change the world with their businesses. Yeah, cool. And what's the actual feel that you get from the children going through those things? How do they feel? Look, so a lot of our work is done in the region. So it's about 70-30, 70% in regional communities and 30% of our kids are in capital cities. Because in the region, self-employment is a viable career pathway. Lots of kids living in the regions have zero job pathway. They have zero job prospects. Thus, going out and starting a business is something quite practical and something quite feasible. So for those students, our workshop is firmly based around getting the kids to start a micro business or a small business, because it is quite feasible. Whereas in capital cities, we get them to just engage with that entrepreneurial skill set. We know the importance of an entrepreneur in big business and medium-sized business today. And our programs for capital cities are really to promote those creative and entrepreneurial thinking skills within everyday young people. Not necessarily to go and start a business, because not every kid wants to go and start a business. We still need employees, but really to teach those skills that employers need in that workforce, and we engage that in the classroom. Yeah, that's brilliant. So when you work with schools and in delivering these entrepreneurship programs and business boot camps, does the teachers feel like they're out of depth? Tough question. Tough question, absolutely. Look, we work with thousands of amazing teachers from around Australia and New Zealand, and look, I think they all want to be creative in the classroom. They all want to try. Obviously, everyone wants what's best for the children, and it's unfortunate that we have such an overcrowded curriculum that doesn't give teachers the opportunity to be creative, to try new things, to experiment. And I get the argument for having standardization with the classroom. It's obvious, like you can't possibly have individual education within our current model where we're paying obviously a huge amount per child through our state-based education system. They want to engage with these skills. They understand the importance of entrepreneurial skills. And we complement really what they're doing in the classroom. And obviously the way we operate it allows the students to learn these vital skills in a very express format, which is something that teachers quite simply aren't able to do just due to the sheer amount of content they have to get through in the average school day. So, look, we work with amazing teachers. Very grateful for our brilliant teachers to let us come into their classrooms.
Yeah. Do you think that there needs to be a shift in the curriculum delivery system to allow teachers to actually have the mindset to, or even start to think about the fact that they can start to deliver these things in a different format than they know? The reason I'm asking this is because we ran a workshop with a school in the north side, and it was on VR technology, and one of the teachers was so stressed out, and he just couldn't fathom the amount of content that they have to learn on top of the additional things to deliver this new technology. And he was asked to be the guinea pig in the school to lead it.
Yeah, wow.
A little bit more stress on top of that. And he was just so concerned. And we were recommending him to allow the children to learn through play. However, that wasn't something he was ready to do because it's out of his control and it's different to the standard teaching style. And this is a common factor that we see throughout a lot of the teachers that introduce these new concepts, and they're actually starting to worry about their job prospects in 5 to 10 years' time, because it's almost like, well, the skills that they have to teach now are going to be obsolete, or some of them are obsolete. So what happens if they don't know those things? Did you have any thoughts on what the education system is going to look like in Australia in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, look, to be completely honest, I think it's going to, in the next 5 years, it's going to look very similar to what it is right now. Obviously, that wouldn't be my goal, but I think the reality is 5 years will look quite similar. Obviously, Queensland's now moved to the 8-hour system, which, in my opinion, is probably a bit more a system from the past. And the fact that Queensland is only moving to that right now is probably a bit of a concern. But look, I think, yes, I would love a change. I would love to see the idea of project-based learning being a focal point of learning in the classroom, where all of our subjects are very much intertwined. Instead of going to maths class or English class, our subjects are intertwined. We have different mentor-type teachers that guide us across a very wide array of subject base and content and knowledge if we need it. I did very poorly in school. I was suspended 4 times.
That can't be right.
During school. So, look, certainly if there's anyone who wants a change to the current system, it's me, because I didn't succeed in it.
Yeah.
I finished grade 12 and I just hit the attendance threshold to get my Queensland Certificate of Education. But certainly in primary school, I picked up 3 of my suspensions during grade 1 to grade 6. So I'd love to see the idea of project-based learning and learning via experimentation becoming a focal point in that workforce of the future, and even classroom of the future is very much based upon that. So I think in the 5 years probably not much. It won't change, but I would love to see a nice change. And if you don't mind me touching base on a person that's honestly, even I have a lot of admiration for you in what you've achieved at such a young age, and just looking at the fact that it didn't align with yourself and what your potential is during that schooling period. Why do you think that was? Is it because there wasn't a platform or an opportunity for you to actually do what you can and showcase it? Definitely, I just could not connect the dots between the things I was learning in the classroom and how that was actually going to impact me in the real world. I could not connect the dots. I didn't see the point of it. Doing long division in the classroom, I just could not see how that was actually going to make sense and how that was possibly going to contribute to my life in the future. And I think therefore I was messing around. I was distracting every other child in the classroom and got suspended several times. Obviously, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a lawyer, you don't have a choice but to go to university. But I think I knew from a very young age that maybe I wasn't going to follow the traditional pathway.
So it works for some people.
It does work for some people, and I probably wouldn't feel very comfortable if a doctor didn't have a university degree. But I think in a lot of other industries, we know the importance or the lack of importance of a business degree now. Is clear. Employers don't care about a business degree because every single child is graduating university with a business degree. It doesn't tell anyone anything. It doesn't set anyone above anyone else. And I think the importance of traditional education is declining. It has been declining for some years now. And I think, obviously, looking at alternate pathways, going and starting a business for students living in the regions, taking a more alternate pathway for students living in regional and remote communities is quite feasible. But going to university is not, because a university degree for them in a community that has no jobs is completely worthless. So, no, it's fascinating. I think I have the best job in the world. I get to meet some great people and get to experience some of the most amazing kids. So, we have some amazing business ideas.
Definitely. And that's something I think even graduates coming out of university here face, and especially in a competitive market. Recently, we ran how to enter the industry in a creative way for tertiary students and graduates. And one of the biggest concerns that we were looking at was SEEK released these data that in Australia that showed on average there's about 130,000 graduates coming out of every industry across Australia, and from that there's only 60,000 jobs that are applicable for a given sector. And obviously that's a huge bracket, and that massive amounts of competition that creates for the individual coming out of it, and the universities necessarily don't teach how to tackle with that competition as well.
And 2/3 of parents in our report said that that young people lack business and entrepreneurial skills. And 1/3 said schools are not preparing young people for the workforce of the future. If 1/3 of parents do not believe that, so that's 1 out of 3 kids, and their parents don't believe that them sending their kids to school 5 days a week is not preparing them for the future, we've got an issue. And I think we just found this is going to be a massive problem, as we consistently have massive youth unemployment with these kids who are graduating, spending a huge amount on degrees, and then going into very little work opportunities after.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you was, do you feel as though in the Australian education system there's a disconnect between the secondary, tertiary, and the industry? What I mean by that is each system works on its own rather than a collaborative, holistic approach, and the students that go through that process, and I'm saying this from the point of view having gone through it myself and observed my students and the people that we worked with, that the schooling system prepares them in a slightly misaligned way to what tertiary does, and then tertiary does the same thing to what industry does. And it's almost like every time they transition from one sector to the next, they have to relearn things or realize that the fact that the training that they received to date isn't necessarily preparing them for the next one, and they're almost restarting and start doubting themselves and feeling inadequate. What are your thoughts on that?
I have to be very careful with my wording, because one of my new sponsors is a university. So
there you go.
I've had to be very careful in the last couple of weeks with some of my words with media and obviously podcasts as well.
Of course.
Look, I think there is a time and place for all sectors. Obviously, there is no stats prove that the importance of, say, the tertiary and the university pathway is declining, and they've had to find new ways of showing value. And I think one of personally, my belief is this idea of short courses is something that where universities have a lot of knowledge, they've got a lot of amazing systems, they've got a lot of amazing knowledge, but communicating that in a very concise manner, in my opinion, is something of extremely high value. So in terms of whether school is preparing young people for university and then university preparing for jobs, yes, there is a slight disconnect, inevitably. And I think really they should all be playing to their skill sets, which I don't think they are. But they're going to need to. University's going to have to understand that not every kid wants to study 4 years in one place. We know there are lots of Queensland universities now showing and bringing lots of short courses to their individual universities to engage industry, to engage people who don't want to sit in the classroom for 4 years. And so certainly a change is happening. Yes, there is a disconnect, but I believe everyone has understood their area of edge, and hopefully one day it will come together quite nicely. But I can certainly assure you Griffith University is doing an absolutely wonderful job of bridging that gap between that declining number of young people going or wanting to go through tertiary education and a university pathway, and teaching life and wanting to learn life skills. So no, I think yes, there is a gap, but it's closing.
No, that's brilliant. And what are your thoughts on how Australia's alignment with STEM curriculum and the curriculum changes that they're going through in almost combining the traditional subjects that they had 5 years ago, last year actually, rolling out newer ones that are more aligned with the American system. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I don't believe STEM skills are important for the future at all.
Okay.
STEM skills came in, I think, collectively as number 10 of what makes a person successful or a young person successful in 30 years' time. And when we saw that, we were just like, this is pure evidence that STEM skills are very useful in the workforce of today, but they will be incredibly useless in the workforce of the future, because right now, millions of kids in India, millions of kids in China, Vietnam, are learning STEM skills. They're being taught STEM skills on a radical level. In Vietnam, the kids do 7 to 7 days, 6 days a week in terms of their schooling-based system. Mm-hmm. Right now, if we want to compete against these guys, we do 5 days a week at school. I'm not saying kids should study 6 days a week and go 7 to 7, because that's just ridiculous, but we should be playing to our skill sets. And by teaching Australian students STEM skills, we're going to be creating a generation of unemployed young people. It's a commodity. Every single child is going to learn how to code. Every single child is going to understand basic STEM skills. And when you train a massive generation of STEM students, inevitably the price of hiring those STEM graduates or STEM students is going to go down drastically. Mm-hmm. We saw that with basic word processing, people how to use administrators. Administration is a blue-collar skill because every single child got taught how to use a computer and type a good email. Every single child right now in Queensland is being taught how to code. And from primary school, if you go to a state school, you are being taught how to code. As are millions of kids in India, as are millions of kids in China and Vietnam. We should be playing to our skill sets. And our skill sets of Australia, inevitably the Australian people are creative. The Australian people want to create change. Australian young people should be learning soft skills. Australian young people should be taught how to communicate. They should be taught how to manage those STEM graduates in India, in Vietnam, in China, but not necessarily be them, because they will be blue-collar skills. We'll be hiring them very, very cheap in that workforce of the future. So I think, well done, Australia, for getting onto it last year. But in an ever-changing global economy, we need to stay up to date. And teaching STEM skills, and in particular teaching coding skills, is a complete and utter waste of time for young people. Because we're going to create a generation of unemployed young people. And in 10 years' time, we'll be like, hey, why did we teach these skills to young people? And someone would have said, well, the USA did it. And we know prior to the Trump administration coming in 2016, the unemployment of young people was massive. It was huge youth unemployment prior to 2016. And I think that's what's going to happen here if we keep going on the same trajectory we're on right now of teaching STEM skills and coding skills.
That's brilliant, and I think a lot of our listeners are actually that's going to hit them hard, and those comments, and it's quite good because it will actually be a bit of an eye opener. And I agree, this is something that we communicate to our teachers as well, and start to question. But and I love the fact that you've actually justified how it affects on a global skill set and aligning us with playing towards the strengths of Australia, and that's exactly right. And especially with the future of work, geolocation necessarily doesn't matter anymore with VAs and everything coming into play with, and everyone kind of specializing their own different sectors. Australia definitely needs to play towards that, and following doesn't necessarily put us in that place. So that's brilliant. One of the things I wanted to get your opinion on and get a little bit technical was how this works within a student's brain, right? So in terms of looking at a general holistic level of what the left brain, right brain combination and how that engages a student's mind. So for example, if you're looking at an accountant's brain, it's going to be very logical, very structured, versus an artist in a very contrasting way with creativity and so on. How does that work in terms of innovation? Do you see this being a combination of both, and it's the teacher's responsibility to engage both of those sectors of the brain in the student? And how do you see that fitting in with 21st century skills?
Yeah, like I just graduated from high school like a year, 2 years ago, and I think a lot of my peers, or I'd say even most of my peers, graduated from school not understanding what their skill set was, what their profitable skills are versus what their least profitable skills are. And I think that's a concern when you've got grade 12 graduates who are 17, 18 years old who don't understand what makes them them. They don't understand what makes them profitable. They don't understand what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. That to me is a massive, grave concern. So in terms of, obviously we know the workforce of the future is going to demand teamwork and collaboration more than ever. We know the importance of young people working together, especially, as you mentioned before, in a very globally connected world, whether that be through people working from different states, different countries, different cultural backgrounds, different languages even.
Yep.
The idea of collaboration and teamwork has never been so prominent. And I think in school there should be a basic life skills class, and in that life skills class it could be basic things like learning about taxes, learning about financial literacy, but also going into what makes you you. What are the skills that you should be working on? If you're going to join a team, these are the skills that make you you. I don't believe young people leave school, or they don't leave school understanding those skills. And really I think something as basic as a life skills class. We had PC time, which in my opinion was a complete waste of time. It was 40 minutes of just wastage in a class day.
PC time as in just literally on a computer?
Homeroom, pastoral care, I don't know what they call it now. But seriously, like, everyone would agree, like, it was 40 minutes of complete waste of time. It was like a social session. And I'm all for social session. I think, obviously, talking about the importance of human skills, being able to build relationships is important.
Yeah.
And really, I think PC time for us was building relationship, but I don't think that was the objective. But having a life skills class where you can teach those understanding skill sets, understanding mindset, understanding leadership skills, understanding the way in which you want to lead, understanding the ways in which learning how to manage people. I think that there could be a class there which we've got time for it. It's a waste of time right now class, so we've certainly got time for it. It's not without extending a school day.
Yeah,
it's quite easy. So yeah, no, I think it will be interesting seeing when it hits us on a global level.
Yeah. Do you think what's the movement that's happening on the other side of the world in Singapore and Luxembourg and Finland and so on, who are considered as leaders in education, they've recently scrapped subjects and school is now school, and this aligns with what you've been saying, which is why I wanted to get your point of view on it. They don't necessarily you go to your maths class and your science class and your social class and PE and so on. School is just school. The kids come there, they learn through play, they learn through a bunch of different things. So what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Look, I think one of the important things there is I was in Singapore a couple of weeks ago, and I think working with the ministry for a couple of projects that we're looking at running in Singapore. And yes, they're considered a leading education force, but I walked into some of the classrooms and the kids don't know how to communicate. They've got an amazing STEM curriculum. In fact, it is world class, they're number one, right?
Yeah.
But they don't know how to communicate. The kids cannot hold a conversation. They're amazing when it comes to public speaking and regurgitating a script, but their ability to come up with unique and creative conversation starters was lacking.
So they're not thought leaders?
They're not thought leaders at all. They don't have those impromptu people skills. They don't know how to adapt. And yes, they may look like they're a leading education force, but having been in a classroom a couple of weeks ago in Singapore with the ministry, I can assure you those kids are not real world ready. They're ready for the economy where every kid will be paid a general salary and they'll become great coders, and I'm sure they'll be very good at that. And brilliant, but they can't communicate. And in a workforce of the future, in an interconnected workforce of the future, communication is fundamental. So, look, I think there is we've got High Tech High in San Diego and in the USA who's got a fully project-based learning school. We've all heard about them. They're brilliant. The principal's called a CEO, Larry Rosenstock. Having a CEO of a school, in my opinion, is cool. It shows that we're running it like a business. You run it in a way that with outcomes at the very end. And if you don't hit the outcomes, then your board is angry, right? So I think in that sense, I'd love to see a high-tech high equivalent. Leave Singapore, great. I'm hoping to work with the ministry, so I'm very happy with what they've done with the STEM curriculum. So they set their mind to a STEM curriculum and they did it very well. But in terms of how I'd like to see education run, I'd love to see a high-tech high equivalent all around the country, all around the world, in fact, because that really is an example of a world-class education.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a recent push with Education Queensland, and I think with Department of Education and Training, they've introduced a whole bunch of roles with business development managers, exactly to that point of treating a school as a business. And I think it's important, similar to universities, they're going to have a board of advisors that are not within the school, that are not taught the exact same thing with a whole bunch of red tape. There's actually going to be external influence and advice. So do you think in that's a very good move towards a better education system?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I think external influences, regardless whether it's a school, whether it's a private organisation, a charity, government, advisory committees, I think are fundamental. And a lot of private schools are implementing them. Obviously, we have PNCs for state schools, and they're doing an absolutely amazing job coordinating the schools and making decisions. And I think having maybe a formal advisory committee for each school could do them a lot of good, with someone from each sector. It might be a real estate agent, it might be a small business owner, it might be a medium-sized business owner, and then a big business partner. Someone who can just provide a business mind and give that insight into what is the workforce of the future. So it's not just coming from private enterprise like 56 Creations and you guys, but also actual industry saying, hey, well, yes, this is correct. We don't want more STEM graduates. We don't want more tech graduates. What we want is young people who can communicate. I think that could be quite useful.
I think that's well said, mate. And I'm just being aware of time, and I know you're a very busy individual. I just wanted to ask if you had any last takeaway for our teachers and listeners about how to tackle these new changes and embracing the change that's happening in Australia in particular, and any wisdom or messages that you want to pass on to the listeners?
Look, I think right now, in terms of practical activities, you don't have time for it as teachers. But in terms of mindset-wise, introducing young people to the idea of mentoring, success by association, you surround yourself with amazing people. Some of that amazingness does rub off on you as well. And I think a lot of young people go through school without knowing that. They don't know that mentors can turbocharge their journey, their experiences.
And you're obviously talking from personal experience. I know, I think you've gone through a lot of very world-class mentors all around the world. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been very lucky. I went to my first Tony Robbins seminar at 14 as soon as I finished 56 Creations, and I was in New York last year, walking out of my apartment. And so I spent a decent amount of last year. We were about to launch into the USA, and I guess we learned a lot in that journey. It was a personal learning experience. We decided not to launch into the USA. But I was walking out of my apartment on 30th Street and was walking down into a film studio to do a TV segment. And the person who was walking out was Tony Robbins.
Wow.
And we were in the studio, and this guy had just finished his segment. I was about to walk in to do mine. And I was like, this was the person that I looked up to from 14 to 18 when I started my business. And then for me to bump into a studio, he literally inspired me to get started. And the only reason I was in that film studio was because of his inspiration when I was 14 years old, when I started 56 Creations.
Yeah.
So people like that, I've been very lucky just to bump into those people. But I think for young people, just being introduced to a mentor, being able to discuss your dreams, goals, and I think that's where career guidance comes in as well.
Yeah.
Career guidance needs to be completely reimagined in a way that we're not just looking at job preparation, but actually asking young people, what do you want to achieve? And I think that's where mentors, industry mentors, can come in quite useful. I did a visualization board from a very young age where I just put everything I wanted to achieve when I was 14. And at the time, it was very materialistic. I had the new phones, watches.
Of course, the cool toys.
All the cool toys. And I think I was looking at my 14-year-old visualization board last year, and I'd achieved everything on that board except the car because I don't even have my learner's license expired.
There you go.
And I think it was that visualization. It was funny. Like, I had that board from 14 to 16 right in front of me, and I didn't look at it for 2 years after. And I looked at it last year, and I was like, shit, I've achieved everything on this board that I wanted when I was 14. So I think also teachers encouraging that. It's an easy activity to put in to just get young people to start thinking, what is success for me in 10 years' time? And not just writing down SMART goals or whatever that shitty stuff we did in school, but actually putting the visual way of what do I want to achieve.
Yeah.
And then obviously flowing from that, mentors come in and, well, how do I achieve this beautiful house? Then in order to get there, I need a mentor, and finding a mentor from LinkedIn. And it just all flows from there. So I think an easy starting place would certainly be a visualization board, and then connecting mentors and go from there.
Yeah, brilliant. And you've actually shared the story of meeting Will Smith with me the last time we met. And for our young listeners, I if you don't mind sharing that, because I think it highlights the fact that when you want something, you go get it, and taking action and following your heart is actually very important, and I really admire that, and I think you've discovered that at a very young age. But a lot of students doubt themselves because of their background or their values and beliefs. So do you mind sharing that story, just because I feel like it'll be an inspiration?
Absolutely. So yeah, like it was quite lucky. So 56 Creations won the Westpac Business of Tomorrow Award back in 2017. We were the smallest business that won the award. I think the smallest business to us was making, I think, maybe 50, 60 mil rev. So we were certainly the smallest business in this program. I was the youngest in the program. I was still 17 at the time. And as part of this award, we were given $100,000 and a global tour. And obviously banks have a lot of money, and we started in the US, where we met the co-founders of LinkedIn, co-founders of Airbnb, and we were off to Shanghai, and we were in the first class lounge in Hong Kong or Shanghai, and obviously some pretty amazing people in the lounge. I was completely in awe because I'd never been in a first class lounge before, and was with some amazing people. We had the Westpac CEO there. We had some truly amazing people in that room, and I was all very excited because there were lots of people I recognized walking around in this lounge, but apparently the lounge etiquette is you don't talk to anyone in this lounge.
There you go. So you've been told not to approach now.
Like, it was this unheard of rule, which I don't know, apparently it was in China, they have lots of people there, and it was just don't talk to anyone in the lounge.
There you go.
And on the corner of my eye, Will Smith walked by. Will Smith and Jaden walked by with this massive security guard and his assistant, and he had a hat on and he had white hair, and I never picked Will Smith as someone who had white hair.
Wow.
And I was like, shit, is that Will Smith? And he took a seat literally right over the table or right over the sofa where I was sitting with the guys at Westpac. And I was like, well, screw etiquette. Like, I'm so going to talk to this guy because I've seen this guy on TV, I've watched his movies.
Once in a lifetime.
This really is a once in a lifetime thing. And went over and said hey, and thought, all right, well, what's the worst that can happen with this one? And I went to go say hey, and I was like, hey, can we sit down? Can we grab a drink? And he was so cool. He was off for a family holiday to Bali.
Yeah. And
he was more than okay just to sit down and have a chat. And we're very lucky for about half an hour. We just had a chat. And I think, first of all, I passed him in the bathroom, and I think that was the first introduction where I was in the male bathroom, and I was doing something in the bathroom, as was he, and we walked past the thing, and he was right next to me, so I was like, this is going to be the opportunity, and I said hey, and we hit it off. So that was very lucky. Everything he said was very quotable, and I think I said that to you last time, where the way in which I spoke to Will at the time was everything you see on TV was real. Everything you see on the interviews he does on TV and whatnot really is him, and
very authentic.
He's so authentic, and he was happy. He gave me 30 minutes of his time, and this is a guy who's just like, I was a nobody, right? And he was happy just to spend 30 minutes talking to me about what I did, and obviously sharing some things he learnt as well. And I think it was certainly something I'm never ever going to forget.
And I think you mentioned the fact that he actually introduced himself as Will.
Yeah, like, so when I introduced myself, I was like, hey, I'm Taj, and I didn't say Will. I was like, Will Smith, my name is, because I just thought, like, you don't never say Will, right?
Yeah.
And he extended his hand and was just like, yeah, Will Smith, and like, obviously he's Will Smith, and a man who needs no introduction. It's like Roger Federer introducing himself. It just doesn't happen. And like the fact that he even thought that was normal, when I would have thought he knows that, or I would think he thinks everyone knows him.
Yeah.
But no, I thought it was such a down-to-earth guy. It was an opportunity of a lifetime.
I think that's brilliant, Mel, and a lot of takeaways from that, because even a star that of that caliber, staying so humble to the ground, and the fact that you saw the opportunity and made that happen and went after it, that's brilliant. A lot of takeaways from that. Mate, I don't want to keep you too long. Thank you so much for coming onto Inspiring Design, and hope you have a massive day.
Thanks, Matt. Cheers.
Cheers, man.